In this video, we're going to learn about diffusion and passive transport. So what is diffusion? Diffusion basically is a phenomenon that explains why things spread. Imagine you have a cup of coffee and then you put some cream on top of it. In the beginning, if you don't use a spoon to stir your coffee, in the beginning the cream sits on the top. But over time, if you sit down and watch your coffee, you'll notice that this cream is going to start spreading to other places in the coffee. And finally, you get to a point where the cream is spread pretty much evenly in your coffee. This is a process called diffusion. Diffusion is the tendency of molecules to move from a place of high concentration to a place where they are less concentrated until an equilibrium is reached. So what does that look like? So right now, in the beginning, you only have cream in here, you have zero cream in here, so the cream is going to move this way in the beginning, okay? But then over time, you're going to have some more cream in here, so some of this cream is going to go back up and in this direction and all sorts of different directions, and then you also have cream going this way. But most of the movement is going to be more towards the places where cream doesn't exist. So then you're going to have more cream molecules that are going down or spreading all across this cup. Over time, as the cream moves into the cup, some of those molecules are going to go back up again or go to the side. So when we say a molecule moves from a place of high concentration to a low concentration, that doesn't mean that molecules only move in one direction. We're talking about the net movement of molecule. Now, if you were going to tally all the different cream molecules in the cream that are moving in different directions, the net movement would be downwards or to the side where the cream molecules are going to spread. Finally, you get to a stage when you reach equilibrium. And equilibrium doesn't mean static. It means that there are as many molecules of cream that are going up as there are going down. There are as many that are going to the left as there are to the right. There are many molecules as going towards the upper hand corner than there are in the lower right corner. Same thing on the left. So the end product of diffusion, the final result, is equilibrium. That means equilibrium is a situation where the molecules are evenly moving in all sorts of directions. But in the beginning, there is an unequal distribution, and the distribution becomes equal afterwards. So why are we talking about coffee in a biology class? Well, because the concept of diffusion also relates to how our cells work. So imagine that our plasma membrane was a kind of a barrier that would allow everything to pass, all molecules, because some molecules do pass through the membrane. So let's say you add some molecules to a cell in which there is none of these molecules. Let's say glucose is inside the cell. There is no glucose inside the cell, but there are some you add to the solution outside the cell. What happens over time, because molecules tend to move from a place that are more concentrated to a place where they're less concentrated, these molecules are going to eventually go and move inside the cell. So then we're going to have the net movement of these molecules are going to be towards inside the cell. Now these ones are coming into the cell, but then they're also, some of them are going to go back up, but most of these molecules are going this way. Finally, you get to a stage where equilibrium is reached. That means there are as many molecules going inside the cell as there are that are going outside the cell. However, the plasma membrane doesn't allow all molecules to pass through, only a few of them. The plasma membrane acts like a filter. And what is the filter? What is that? What is the blocking thing? Well, there's this hydrophobic membrane inside, this blanket inside, that doesn't really like to mix with polar and charged molecules, so it won't let them pass. Not only based on hydrophobicity, the plasma membrane filters molecules and kind of blocks them from entering, it also discriminates based on size. If a molecule is bigger, even if it's a hydrophobic molecule, if a molecule is bigger than a particular size, the plasma membrane filters them. It won't allow them to go in. So here it is. You can think of it as a hydrophobic wall. The inside of our plasma membrane is like a hydrophobic wall. So molecules that can cross the membrane automatically and they're not impeded are small nonpolar molecules and small hydrophobic molecules. So molecules that are nonpolar, like oxygen. Oxygen is nonpolar. CO2. What molecules cannot pass? Polar or charged molecules and large biological molecules, biomolecules. Water can pass in some very slow rate, but cells have channels in their surface called aquaporins, which make movement of water across the membrane a little bit more efficient. Okay, so now quiz yourself. Can CO2 pass the plasma membrane? Can glucose pass the plasma membrane? What about the sodium ion? Which can or which cannot? Come to discussion, make your guess, come to discussion, and we'll see if you got the correct answer. Okay, so if the cells did not provide an opportunity for charged molecules, polar molecules, or molecules that are a little bigger than, let's say, oxygen and CO2 or water, life probably wouldn't exist. So how does the cell make it possible for molecules that normally can't pass the plasma membrane to pass? One way that this is done is by facilitated transport. That means it's facilitated transport. It's basically diffusion, except some help is needed. And there are various different ways that this is done. You've seen protein channels before. We said these are integral membrane proteins that have a channel inside of them. So one way that molecules can pass through the plasma membrane is by utilizing these channels to go down their concentration gradient. There are also molecules that are carrier proteins that are a little bit more specific to the type of the molecule that they allow pass. One example is how glucose enters inside the cells so your cells can utilize them. So when there is glucose, the level of glucose increases in your body produces insulin. Now insulin is a signaling molecule, and there are protein receptors on the surface of the cell that can sense insulin, and they can bind to it. Now as a result of this binding, a signal is passed from outside to the inside of the cell, and there is a particular vesicle, you've seen vesicles before, that carries a molecule, one of these facilitated, one of these molecules, carrier proteins. It's sitting on a vesicle, so this signal tells the vesicle go to the plasma membrane. So this vesicle goes in, fuses with the plasma membrane, and it allows glucose to come in. So this is an example of when a molecule is too big to pass through the membrane, the movement is assisted by a carrier protein.